So Thutmose II came to the throne. Following the previously discussed family tradition, Thutmose married his half-sister Hatshepsut. And, at least according to Hatshepsut, the two of them were jointly left the kingship of Egypt by their father. Hatshepsut might have believed, with some justification, that she was actually a stronger candidate for the throne, given that while her half-brother was born of a minor consort of non-royal blood, Hatshepsut's mother was Queen Amuset, the daughter and wife of a pharaoh. Although even the sorts of people who believe in blood purity probably think blood can get a little too pure. In any case, the family tradition ensured that there could be no qualms whatsoever about the royal lineage of Thutmose II's children. Well, things didn't work out that way, as we'll see when Thutmose dies. Spoiler warning. So, there are lots of ways of framing this couple of reigns in Egyptian history. I'd like to frame it as Hatshepsut and her boys, the way that the women that surrounded Henry VIII are simply Henry's wives, whereas we could also reframe it as Henry VIII being a man-child, and the women he married having the dubious honour of looking after him between attacks of gout and heresy. Anything in history can be reframed, and there are simply too many Thutmoses, so let's focus on Hatshepsut. The first of Hatshepsut's boys was her brother-husband Thutmose II, who seems to have taken the throne when he was a child, and reigned for either a decade or a little longer. Actually, I guess, arguably, Hatshepsut's first boy would be her father, Thutmose I. What do you think? Comment below with your favourite of Hatshepsut's boys. Thutmose II died quite young, in his 30s, likely from some disease since the mummy shows signs of pre-mortem wasting away. Thutmose II had 2 children. Now, as I said not long ago, presumably the idea behind marrying him to his incrementally more royal half-sister was so that their children would be unimpeachable heirs, but it didn't quite work out that way. His son and designated heir, Thutmose III, was born to a woman of common birth called Iset, who was either a minor wife or simply a concubine. His daughter Neferure was born to Hatshepsut. We don't get to find out if Neferure would have been made heir to Hatshepsut because sadly she predeceased her mother. It seems likely this would have been Hatshepsut's plan, but as I say, we'll never know. Hatshepsut had been more or less co-regent with her husband, and there is evidence that during the last few years, presumably when Thutmose II was battling the mysterious illness that would eventually claim his life, she was officially his regent, and when Thutmose II did die, Thutmose III was an infant, somewhere between 1 and 2 years old. It was the most natural thing in the world for Hatshepsut to continue her regency, even though, as Thutmose III's stepmother, she couldn't claim the vaunted title of King's Mother. She did possess the title of God's Wife of Amun, which conferred with it quite some authority, as it symbolised that by marrying the king she'd become Amun's consort, and thus her children would bear divine blood. It turns out that 2-year-olds are pretty easy to undermine politically, and Hatshepsut was inconsistent in using her son's authority when acting in his name, sometimes using her name instead of his on official documents. By the time her stepson was around 8 years old, she was ruling as pharaoh in her own right, statues of her wearing the twin crowns, 5 royal names, the whole package. It's important, when referring to Hatshepsut, to call her king and not queen at this stage of her life. We've discussed the linguistic reason for this elsewhere, but more importantly she was depicted as king, with the pharaonic headdress and false beard, and in statues as a somewhat androgynous figure. That androgyny, which to be clear was a stylistic choice for her representation, not necessarily a reflection of her physical traits, would cause some confusion among modern Egyptologists. There's a folk etymology that I want to share, and it's about the word pharaoh. I've said in previous videos that the word originally simply meant great house, and that over time it came to be applied to the person of the king. Well, it was during the 18th dynasty that this transformation took place, around the time of Hatshepsut's reign. It is possible the title was used to ambiguate whether she or her son was issuing a proclamation. We can't know for sure, and there are no extant documents showing this to be the case, so it's definitely not accepted as the dominant theory, but I like the idea of such a trailblazing pharaoh also being the first to officially be called pharaoh. Hatshepsut pursued policies of trade, exploration, and diplomacy, greatly improving Egypt's standing in the world around it. She built so many grand and beautiful structures that later pharaohs would put their names on them rather than demolish them outright. So many statues were made in her reign that there is not an Egyptological museum in the world that doesn't have at least some statuary from her time. Hatshepsut's ridiculously impressive mortuary temple, called at the time Djeser Djeseru, the Holy of Holies, was so awe-inspiring that future pharaohs, even those who contributed to the diminution of her memory and actively stole her achievements, wanted to be interred in the valley that this temple was the gateway to. So many ended up following this trend that it became the customary burial ground of the New Kingdom, and hence the modern-day name Valley of the Kings. At the time it was called either the Great Field, or, far more interestingly, the Great and Majestic Necropolis of the Millions of Years of the Pharaoh. I have more to say about Hatshepsut, and guess what? It's my channel, so I get to. So, next week, rather than moving on to talk about more of Hatshepsut's boys, I want to discuss ancient and modern perspectives on the most famous woman to don the pharaonic regalia. Thanks for watching and keeping up the rights of like, comment and subscribe. It helps a lot while I'm staying on this single topic for the next couple of weeks. The kings, queens and no-good priests who get a lengthy mention in my mortuary temple are my backers at patreon.com/armchairegypt, and may their names be preserved eternally. Until next time, my fellow armchair Egyptologists, life, prosperity and health to you all. Thanks for watching. Head over to my channel for more, or click here to see what the YouTube demons think you should watch next. I hope you'll consider subscribing. If you'd like to support and collaborate on the channel with me, go to patreon.com/armchairegypt. You can also join my Discord community, there's an invite link in the description.